You're so cold. I don't understand how he comes to this conclusion. I have no obligation to help her, and she doesn't even do what she can do for herself. He's scolding the wrong person. I'm a working woman in my 40s, living with my husband. Our daughter, who we were blessed with, is currently in her second year of middle school. I think she's grown up to be quite obedient. There are various problems in our life together, but we maintain a semblance of calm for our daughter's sake, not wanting to change her environment due to our circumstances. But even dealing with my husband alone is a burden, and he takes on additional burdens. It's the existence of my sister-in-law. Every time she has a fight with her husband, she runs to our house, and she won't leave until her husband apologizes and comes to pick her up. It was fine when their fights were resolved within the day during their newlywed days, but now, over 10 years into their marriage, my husband says things like, "Please take care of her until the weekend." It's ridiculous that she hasn't grown up, still repeating the same patterns from her younger days, even in her mid-30s. Every time my sister-in-law intrudes, our daily rhythm is disrupted, expenses pile up, and the only good thing is that she serves as a negative example for our daughter. I don't want to be an adult like that. My daughter complains to me like this. Nowadays, my sister-in-law decides to freeload at our house whenever she pleases, but she does nothing here. Absolutely nothing. She doesn't pay for the expenses she incurs or do any housework. She acts like a complete guest. What's for my lunch? She asks as if it's only natural when I'm about to leave for work. I wonder why she thinks it's natural for her meal to be prepared. I try not to shout or speak firmly. You're not a child, so prepare your own food. If you use the ingredients in the refrigerator, pay for them properly. It's a nuisance to always be fed for free. Of course, my audacious sister-in-law, who never thinks of doing anything herself, will obediently say, "Understood." She rolls her eyes and starts yelling. What's with the attitude? I'll tell my brother. Just to be clear, she's in her mid-30s. She's married but has no children, yet she's become completely dependent on others. The person she relies on is hopeless too. When my husband receives a complaint from my sister-in-law, he says, "Why don't you just buy her some pastries or something?" So I calmly push back. "Why don't you buy them yourself, with your own allowance?" My husband grimaces and says, "You're so cold." It's just ridiculous. As I mentioned earlier, my sister-in-law doesn't help with housework, so when her stay becomes longer, she puts her dirty underwear in the laundry basket as if it's only natural. Of course, she never asked. She thinks it's only natural for me to do it and for her to have it done. I think it's only natural that I don't do it, so I say harshly, "Wash your own underwear. I'm not your mother and this isn't your house. Besides, you're an adult, or rather, a respectable middle-aged woman, so take care of yourself." My sister-in-law resists this and eventually tattles to my husband. She has no intention of resolving the issue herself. Washing her underwear with the rest isn't a big deal, right? My husband seems to want to impress his sister and say things that miss the point. It's not a matter of time and effort. The problem is that the sister-in-law is in the house, and that she and my husband think it's natural. I become annoyed and say, "Why don't you just have her wash her own underwear in the bathroom? She's not a child." When I say this dismissively, my husband replies, "You're cold-hearted." Dealing with him is truly tiresome. As if I wasn't already fed up with this husband, he brings the problematic sister-in-law into our home and tries to ruin our family. I don't understand what's so cold-hearted. I'm just stating the obvious. An adult woman who would be too embarrassed to have someone else wash her underwear. Even our daughter has started taking care of herself. She washes her own underwear because she doesn't want it mixed with her dad's. As I throw a cold stare at my husband and tell him this, he falls silent. My husband tries to scold me, but always ends up being talked down to. And since he never admonishes his sister-in-law, her attitude only gets worse. One Sunday, when my daughter was sitting on the sofa watching TV, my sister-in-law, who had once again been arguing with my husband, said roughly, "Move, you're in the way." And with that, she swung her leg and kicked my daughter's arm as if to push her away. It was probably for some trivial reason, like wanting to lie down on the sofa. Up until now, I had been letting her get away with just ignoring her. But when she not only spoke out, but used violence against my daughter, I could not forgive her. I stepped in between the two of them to protect my daughter and yelled at my sister-in-law. "What are you doing? It's already insane to barge into someone's house for trivial reasons and act like this is your own place. But to use violence against the child of that house is beyond madness. I have no obligation to let a criminal who hurts my family stay in the house. Get out right now." I had been holding back until now. I had built up a lot of resentment, not just towards my sister-in-law, but also towards my husband's actions. I exploded more than I had imagined. My sister-in-law seemed surprised by my outburst and was speechless for a while. Still, her anger gradually surfaced and she started to open her mouth. But my husband, who heard the commotion, came in and said, "Come on, come on." So she sulked and sat down in a dining chair. My husband tried to calm me down, but the root cause was him pampering his sister, so there was no way I could be appeased. I thought it would be best to make it clear in front of the sister-in-law at this point. So I said with determination, "I'm not joking. I'm fed up with having our lives ruined by your sister. It's not good for our daughter's education to have someone like her in the house. Send her back to her house right away and don't let her come here again." But my foolish husband seemed to take the situation lightly and replied nonchalantly, "Don't exaggerate. If you just tell our daughter to be careful, there won't be a problem, right?" I was at my limit and said while glaring at him, "What are you talking about? I've thought this for a while, but aren't you too lenient with your sister? Is she holding some kind of leverage over you?" My husband didn't like my attitude and pushed me away, saying, "What kind of way is that to talk to your husband?" He pushes me away. I hadn't expected my husband to be violent, and he put a lot of force into it, so I couldn't withstand it. Flew back into the decorative shelf, and a heavy clock fell on my shoulder, causing intense pain. My daughter screamed and rushed to me, but my husband didn't seem to care, and said, "If you learn from this, you should reflect," and left the living room. My sister-in-law was smirking while watching the scene. I can't take it anymore. I can't expect any reasonable thoughts from my husband. It's not just about my sister-in-law. My husband can't hold down a job. When things get a little tough, he quits and looks for another job. His current job is part-time and pays less than a college graduate's starting salary. He couldn't even pay off his college loans, so I've been covering for him after making him sign a promissory note. I'm the one supporting our life now, and doing all the housework. Despite that, my husband doesn't appreciate it and has this arrogant attitude. He doesn't understand his place at all. If he can't understand it, I have to make him understand, right? I decided to divorce him and use this injury as leverage by getting a medical certificate from the hospital. I felt bad for my daughter, but when I talked to her about it, she agreed and said she would come with me after the divorce. There's no reason to hesitate now. I prepared the divorce papers and confronted my husband. He panicked and said, "Calm down, we have a daughter. We can at least wait until she's an adult, right? It's not good for her education if her parents get divorced." I yelled back at him, "It's not good for her education that you're yelling her sister's behavior. You don't even care when our daughter gets kicked. You're a failure as a father to anyone who sees it. I bought the apartment we live in, so it's in my name. I let you stay in the house until now, so why don't you go live with your sister?" I kicked him out. I don't know what happened to my husband in the end, but I sent his belongings to my sister-in-law's place since they weren't much. The divorce negotiations were prolonged because my husband resisted the amount of compensation I proposed, but eventually he gave up and agreed to the divorce when I reduced the amount. I let his debt to me go by having him give up his share of the property, but I have no intention of forgiving him or my sister-in-law for everything that's happened. I don't think he can pay it off properly, but I have to make him realize the weight of what he's done. Well, a man can manage well enough if he works hard and doesn't rely on others. I must have spoiled my husband too much up until now. That's probably why he spoiled his sister too much. I have to reflect on this too. My daughter, on the other hand, is growing up strong and steady, unlike what you'd expect from our child. I have to be grateful to my husband for at least giving me our daughter. Thank you for watching until the end.